Losses from decades ago still sting. In 1990, Princeton lost a state title to unbeaten Warren G. Harding. It was Princeton's Pat Mancuso and Warren's Phil Annarella, two coaching geniuses and legends in the second playoff-era state championship. That game included an athlete who has changed the landscape of high school sports 30 years later. To begin, though, we have to make the trip northeast to take you to the edge of Youngstown. From the east side of town to the west side, what a river divides, it also brings together. It's the flow of life, both turbulent and peaceful. For a football player's strength pushes onward, like the water itself. In Warren, Ohio, the Mahoning brought together coal and iron to industrialize America in the 1800s. And in 1990, it could no longer keep apart two powerhouse football programs, Western Reserve and Warren G. Harding. That's when the east side and the west side became one winning title holder.
28-21 is the final. Harding wins its second state crown.
Football fans around the state hear of Warren G. Harding and think about the greats like Hall of Famer Paul Warfield, former Bengal Ross Browner, and college stars Mario Manningham and Maurice Clarett. But it is the birthplace of one of the biggest protectors of athletes across the nation, Korey Stringer. Stringer was an Ohio State Buckeye All-American and later a first-round draft pick for the Minnesota Vikings. In 2001, he collapsed during training camp. By the time he arrived at the hospital, more than 90 minutes later, his core body temperature was 109 degrees. He died of heat stroke. But this isn't about how Korey died. It's about who he was when he was living that created his legacy. Korey Stringer was the middle of three children.
We grew up in a small little home on the west side of Warren. On any given day, you could find a ton of neighborhood kids playing in our yard.
And they were raised by James and Kathy Stringer.
They were just as kind and bright, and they raised us to be that way as well.
Korey was known as the same, kind and smart.
Korey Stringer was warm, engaging, so funny.
People call him a gentle giant, and it couldn't be more true. That's exactly what he was. He would give the shirt off of his back if you needed it.
Mention Korey Stringer's name around Warren's football program today, and you'll hear the story about his very first and only Pro Bowl.
And I think it was for the Little Raiders football team, and they were falling short in operation budget.
One of his former coaches asked Korey if he could use his connections to see if the NFL would help them. Korey walked out and came back in with a check in his hand.
Korey had just gotten his Pro Bowl check, and so he gave it to him.
Most of the town, including Kevin, did not hear about this story until after Korey passed.
He was somebody who saw the needs of others, no matter what those needs were, and tried to kind of meet those if he could. He was a huge guy who never once tried to bully anybody. He protected the bullied.
And that is his legacy. Korey Stringer now protects the hundreds of thousands of athletes across the nation through the work done at the Korey Stringer Institute that was created from the lawsuit following his death.
He died at the age of 27. He had a lot of life left in him, and I think the legacy of him and what has been created, it can't bring him back, but it has made a big difference.
Since Korey's tragic death in 2001, the NFL has had 0 athletes die. 51 college and high school athletes have died from exertional heat stroke.
Maybe God picks certain people. Our heroes seem to die very young. And maybe Korey, when you ask who Korey is, Korey's a hero to me. And we can't fail at this. We have to make a difference.
And the impact of Korey Stringer's death and the work of his institute inspired our project here at Local 12. Since November, with more than 30 stories, Athletes at Risk has covered everything from the lack of athletic trainers on sidelines to how they serve on the front lines during the coronavirus to the risks that athletes face this fall. You can find all of our coverage at athletesatrisk.com.